Alright, it's 2021 and this is the iPhone 11 and it launched in 2019 and Apple still sells this thing for $600 or pounds or whatever that price is for your country. So today I want to take a look at my top 6 aspects or things that I've noticed after using the phone for around 2 years or so, and then hopefully at the end of the video come to a conclusion as to whether you should still be considering buying the iPhone 11 in 2021. So the way we're going to structure this is there's going to be 6 total points. 3 of them are going to be positive, so things I liked about the phone, and then the other 3 are going to be negative, so things I didn't like. And then at the end we'll figure out whether it's still worth buying. Alright, so positive number 1 is battery life, which I think is one of the most important parts of any phone you should be considering. Mainly because it's really nice when a phone can comfortably last you the whole day, which this phone definitely did. At first, I used to average around 7 hours of screen on time without plugging in, which is super impressive, and I would just use it the whole day and plug in at night, super convenient. And the thing is, this amazing battery life isn't because of some huge battery or anything. This phone actually has like a 3100 or so milliamp hour battery, but as we have to remember every year with these iPhones is that they have that A series of chips, which is super efficient, the A13 in this case, and that combined with iOS means that a small battery in an iPhone is never something to really worry about with battery life. But we obviously know that battery degradation is a pretty real thing, and iPhones are pretty famously good at maintaining good battery health, and my experience has been largely pretty okay. After having it for just under 2 years, I'm on around 85% battery health now, which is fine. So if you consider that people using their iPhones for 4+ years, and you do the math, and 30% battery health loss is a little bit worrying, especially on a phone like the 12 mini, but on this phone, which started with such good battery life, I wouldn't be too worried. Okay, now we're on to negative number 1, which for me is the durability, which I think is a byproduct of the build. So when Apple first showed us this thing, it was basically the same as the 10R, right? Aluminium sides and a glass front and back. But the main issue is, and I think Apple really needs to address this because it hasn't been fixed in the 12 series either, is how easily that front glass scratches. You can see I have one big nasty gash in the top center of my screen, which I don't remember how it happened, but let's say that's my fault. But then surrounding it on the rest of this phone are these little annoying micro scratches, which are inevitable unless you use a screen protector. And as far as I'm aware, many iPhones exhibit this same issue, and with some reviews that I've seen on a couple other Android devices, it's pretty clear that Android devices don't have this glass scratching issue anywhere near as bad as iPhones. So in my opinion, Apple really needs to change whatever this specific glass material is, because it scratches way too much and it kind of scares me to put my phone face down like anywhere. And I guess they already kind of tried to fix that, because with the 12s they had that ceramic shield, but you can watch other reviews that it really didn't seem to help. Now it's important to note, I've been using this phone caseless for pretty much all of my usage, which I get isn't really common. A lot of people use cases and screen protectors, but still, what about the people who don't want to cover up their phones with a cheap bit of plastic? Another note on the design and build is that I've never really liked this really simple, rounded design that iPhones have always had on the rails, and in combination with it being aluminium, it makes this phone really slippery and just not that premium to hold. I don't know, maybe you guys don't care and you just put a case on it at the end of the day, but I really would like to see Apple do some sort of tapers on the edges, just like a lot of OnePlus and Samsung phones do. But I do understand they kind of fixed this with the iPhone 12 series and their boxy sides, but that doesn't affect this phone still not feeling great, so keep that in mind. Alright, so positive number 2 is performance. So as I said, A13 Bionic is still pretty great, and I've had no performance issues really at all, and I don't know what else to say about that. I wouldn't say I use the most taxing apps or usage method at all really, apart from a couple games which, depending on how intensive they are, they do make the phone a little bit hot. The A series of chips is said to be super efficient and one of the most powerful chipsets in any phone, obviously competing with stuff like Snapdragon 865, which was also from last year. I really doubt you'll have any performance issues with a phone this expensive and such a powerful processor. And a good thing to note is that iPhones are pretty well known for keeping that performance long term, which I can 100% agree has been pretty great. And the second con I found with the iPhone 11 has been controversial from the day it was announced, and that is the screen. So this is that same liquid retina LCD 6.1 inch 1792 by 828 resolution, making this less than 1080p. And it's all surrounded by this relatively thick, at least by 2021 standards, bezel, and then that huge notch looking over everything. Alright, again, this has been fixed in the 12 series, so they all have 1080p OLED screens with a little bit of thinner bezels and everything, but this phone it just felt outdated to me every time I picked it up, even by 2 years ago standards. Now, it's not like 828p is that bad, like it's really soft on images and everything. It's actually okay with normal use. But there's something about not being able to watch 1080p YouTube videos on this now £600 phone. But the thing I noticed way more was the lack of OLED, especially when you put it up against a phone like the iPhone XS Max or even the 12 mini, which have significantly more contrasty, bright, vivid screens. It would just look so much better in OLED. But then the issue is that if Apple decided to give a phone like the iPhone 11 an OLED screen in combination with an 828p resolution, that would just mean pixels are individually lit, which is good on a high resolution phone, but when the pixels are that far away on an 828p phone, you would just end up with a fuzzier looking image and it just wouldn't look that good. But other than that, I haven't found the screen to have any sort of horrific flaw in it. It's still a quality screen with great color and viewing angles, and this would probably be great in a budget phone. But I feel like this phone just costs way too much for that, and people got caught up in the numbers a lot. But if, unlike me, you don't get too caught up in the numbers and you're okay with the screen that the iPhone 8 had and every iPhone before that, you can just easily brush past this, and this probably isn't the biggest deal to you. And it also doesn't have high refresh rate, which isn't the biggest deal because, fair enough, this phone was launched 2 years ago and rarely any phones had it then, but let's hopefully not see the same lacking feature in the 13 series. Let's move on to the next one. Alright, so the third and final thing I noticed and enjoyed about the iPhone 11, probably the most, were the cameras. So the 11, just as a refresher, has two 12 megapixel sensors, one standard and one's an ultra wide. And I'm super glad Apple didn't go with another useless telephoto. Even though the ultra wide isn't as good quality as the main camera, it's just way too fun. Now that doesn't mean it's bad quality. I was actually surprised at how low the fisheye distortion was around the edges, and largely the photo quality difference between the main and ultra wide cameras aren't too different. I'll show a couple comparison photos on screen, but they have largely pretty similar exposure, and the only thing that's actually noticeably different between the two lenses is obviously the detail, but it is a secondary lens. Apple's not going to put the same quality sensor in both, but that main camera is also really good. It consistently takes plenty sharp photos, pretty amazing actually, especially when it gets a good amount of light. Colors, whilst they look pretty bland and boring to some people, may look like the perfect opportunity for someone who's more into photography to start editing these photos to get some punchier colors and an overall contrastier look, which I definitely think I would have preferred. And I've rarely found these cameras, maybe never, give me an overexposed or underexposed image. It's pretty much all good news. Portrait mode is also pretty good. It's good at having a pretty aggressive roll-off in terms of blur in the background, but keeping the subject in tack-sharp focus. There were a couple times when the edges would get kind of lost because of the bokeh, and there's not much else to say about the iPhone's cameras because we've seen them pretty consistently not add too many crazy fun features in the camera app. The only main issue I have with portrait mode is that the iPhone seems to be really picky about what lighting it chooses to actually do portrait mode in. And I get that the scene needs to have enough light for the phone to actually make that bokeh, but I would just wish the phone was a little more lenient with the lighting and it would just do portrait mode more often. I mean, when you take a look in the iPhone camera app, what do you have? Tap to focus, portrait mode, not much else. And also something that's interesting is that this entire video has been shot on the front-facing camera of the iPhone 11, just like all of my other videos, which is why I don't actually have the phone in hand. But yeah, you can be the judge of what you think of front-facing 4K 30 video straight from the iPhone 11. And then the final bad thing is actually just iOS. And I wasn't too sure to either put this in the good or bad section because I don't think it is just good or just bad, but I decided to put it in the bad section because there are a couple points I want to speak up about. So why? Why am I not a fan of iOS and what it's doing right now? And what do I want to see from an eventual update? You can't make your icons collapse to the bottom or put them wherever you want for better reachability. Number 2, you can't customize your icons without you having some sort of workaround. Not being able to adjust animation speed, or being able to resize or have the exact position of your widget on your home screen. But the issue is, I feel like we, even as enthusiasts, we need to kind of accept that this is the way the iOS is gonna be, because Apple really seems to be set on this simple UI and everything, but It's a shame because a lot of people want that kind of customization, and iOS, I just don't think it's going to give it to us. Again, I feel like this iOS situation is something we could make a video about, so definitely reach out if you do want to see that. But other than that, that's about it for the things I wanted to mention after using the iPhone 11 for just under 2 years now. So to conclude, the main things you should be thinking about, the main cons of this phone you should be thinking about if you're considering buying it are the screen, the build, and finally, just if you're okay with iOS's strict customization, which I think a lot of people will be. Other than that, most other things I've enjoyed quite a lot about using this phone, like the cameras, battery life, and a couple other things I didn't mention in the top 3, stuff like Face ID. It's been pretty quick, convenient. So that's about it for a few things I wanted to mention. Again, these were main things, not a complete review for the sake of your time, and thanks for watching.